imagine like being 3 years old for just a second.
Okay, I'm there.
Right. You're lying in your bedroom, the lights go out, and suddenly your brain treats that like pile of laundry in the corner as a literal life-threatening predator.
Oh, completely. It's terrifying.
It really is. Your heart is racing, your palms are sweating. I mean, the fear you are experiencing is 100% real, even if, the monster isn't.
Right. The physiological response is identical.
Exactly. So as the adult walking into that room, how do you turn off that alarm? Like, how do you actually explain the concept of fear to a mind that is still figuring out what's real and what's imaginary?
That's a huge challenge.
It is. And that's what we're getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today for you listening is to look at this highly specific framework for how we explain the unknown to children as they grow.
Yeah, and we're using excerpts from this really fascinating guide.
Yes. The Evolution of Darkness, Guiding Children Through Nighttime Fears. We are going to examine the very precise shift in communication strategies for a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 9-year-old.
And, the material we are looking at today, it shouldn't be read just as a parenting script.
Right.
I mean, it is actually a real-time roadmap of human cognitive development.
Oh, I love that way of framing it.
Yeah, it shows us how we process the concept of the unknown and how our requirement for feeling safe fundamentally changes as our brains, wire themselves together over time.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if you look at the source material we have today, it is incredibly brief.
It's surprisingly short.
I mean, we're talking about maybe a few paragraphs of actual text total, but it is so densely packed with psychological strategy. So we're going to invite you, listening right now, to look closely alongside us at how this language of comfort evolves.
Let's start with the youngest,
Yeah.
the 3-year-olds.
Yeah, chronological order makes the most sense. Because this is usually the stage where the human fear of the dark first gets, articulated out loud.
Right, and the scenario in the text begins with a very simple statement from the child. The 3-year-old just says, "I'm scared of the dark."
That's it.
That's it. And in response, the guide instructs the parent to say, "That's okay. Sometimes our brains imagine things when we cannot see clearly, but you are safe."
Okay, I have to admit, when I first read that, the sheer simplicity of the child's statement really stood out to me.
Also,
Just, I'm scared of the dark. It's a raw declaration of emotion. They aren't asking for an explanation of where the light went,
right. They aren't looking for a physics lesson.
Exactly. It feels like an emotional fire alarm. You don't explain the circuitry of the alarm to a toddler while it's literally ringing in their ear.
No, you'd never do that.
You just scoop them up and assure them that there is no actual fire. And the text really highlights that. The core strategy is just validate fear immediately.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the precise architecture of the parent's response. The very first thing out of the parent's mouth is, "That's okay."
Just immediate validation.
Immediate. Because at age 3, the line between reality and imagination is practically non-existent.
It's just a blur.
Totally blurry. To a 3-year-old, if they imagine a monster in the closet, the physiological response in their body is, like we said, identical to what it would be if there were a literal threat in the room.
Cortisol floods the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Heart rate spikes. The fear is a physical reality to them.
Which means if you walk in and tell them, hey, there is nothing to be afraid of, you're essentially telling them that their own internal physical reality is wrong.
Yes, you're invalidating their lived experience. And think about the isolation that causes.
Oh, that's got to be terrifying.
It is. The child's body is screaming that they are in danger, and their protector, the adult, is saying the danger doesn't exist. That dissonance actually creates more panic.
So the instruction to validate the fear immediately is the crucial first step.
You have to anchor them in safety before you can apply any kind of logic.
Right.
And then notice the next part of the phrase the guide recommends. It says, "Sometimes our brains imagine things when we cannot see clearly."
Which is so smart because it introduces the concept of the brain doing something independent of the child.
Exactly. It addresses the imagination directly without dismissing the terror they just felt.
And it ends with the ultimate anchor, right? But you are safe.
Yes.
It doesn't try to convince the child that the dark itself is safe. It centers the safety on the child's current physical state.
It's a subtle difference, but trying to negotiate the philosophical nature of darkness with a toddler seems like a losing battle anyway.
Oh, yeah, completely. You're just trying to shut off the siren through physical and emotional validation.
That's the priority.
But it makes you think about how we communicate with each other, even as fully grown
Oh,
adults.
totally.
Like when you are terrified or overwhelmed, for you listening, whether it's a massive presentation at work or, I don't know, a sudden personal crisis, you just want your raw feelings validated first.
Before someone tries to logically fix it.
Exactly. Before they offer a 5-point action plan, you just want to hear someone say, it makes total sense that you are stressed. That is okay.
We never really outgrow the need for that emotional fire alarm to be acknowledged.
Yeah,
We simply develop a greater capacity to process the blueprint of the building after the alarm is turned off.
I love that. But eventually, simply saying you are safe stops working.
Right. A child's brain hits a developmental wall where raw emotion gives way to a demand for logic.
And that is exactly what the source material explores next. Which brings us to the second phase of this roadmap. Fast forward a few years.
Okay, let's fast forward.
The child is now 6 years old, the cognitive capacity has expanded, and that raw declaration of fear turns into a quest for understanding.
A search for the mechanics of it.
Exactly. The text gives us the 6-year-old's prompt. The child no longer just says they are scared. They ask, why is the dark scary?
It's a big shift.
It is. And the parent's response completely shifts gears, too. The guide suggests saying, our brains are extra careful in the dark because humans used to need protection at night.
The core strategy provided here is science can reduce fear.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting to me because I've got to be honest, reading this part kind of tripped me up.
Yeah, how so?
Well, telling a 6-year-old about evolutionary ancestral survival tactics sounds like a terrible idea on paper.
I can see why you think that.
I mean, we are talking about humans needing protection from literal predators at night. Aren't we just giving a first grader more things to be terrified of? Like, oh, great, now I have to worry about being eaten in the dark by a saber-toothed tiger.
It does seem counterintuitive at first glance, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But it is perfectly calibrated for where a 6-year-old's mind is at. Yeah, because by age 6, children are transitioning out of what psychologists call the pre-operational stage and moving toward concrete operational thinking.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Meaning they are intensely curious about how things work. They're obsessed with rules, with cause and effect, and with categorizing the world.
Ah, okay.
So the source explicitly states that science can reduce fear, and it does that by objectifying the emotion.
What do you mean by objectifying the emotion in this context?
Well, look at the language the parent is instructed to use. It moves away from the highly personal internal language we saw with the 3-year-old, your brain imagining things.
Right, it was very focused on the child's internal state.
Exactly. But now it introduces a collective historical reality. Humans used to need protection. It takes the fear out of the child's individual mind and places it into the grand sweep of human history.
Oh, wow. So they feel less alone in it.
Yes, the child learns they aren't broken or cowardly because they are scared. They are just experiencing a normal biological echo of their ancestors.
Okay, I see. It frames the brain as like an overzealous security guard.
That's a great way to put it.
Right, like the brain is just trying to do its job, but it is working off an incredibly old rule book.
A very outdated manual.
Yeah, a rule book from thousands of years ago when there were actual dangers outside the cave.
Yeah.
The child is perfectly safe in a modern house, but the security guard hasn't gotten the memo yet and is still, like, patrolling the perimeter.
That is the exact mechanism at play. When a child understands that their brain is just being extra careful because of something that happened a long time ago, it externalizes the problem.
It takes the pressure off them.
It removes the personal shame of being afraid. They aren't weak. Their security guard is just a little too dedicated.
You can see how powerful that is when you apply it to yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
For you listening right now, think about a time in your own life when you finally understood the mechanical or historical root of a problem you were having.
Like a light bulb going off.
Yeah, like when you realize your chronic back pain is because of the specific way human spines evolved to walk upright, or understanding that your intense craving for sugar is an evolutionary survival mechanism for storing calories, not just a personal lack of willpower.
Right, because knowledge strips away the shame.
Exactly.
Which in turn strips away the terror. The problem doesn't disappear, but it transforms from a monster in the closet into a manageable puzzle.
The unknown just sort of evaporates when you shine the light of mechanics on it.
It does.
But that thirst for understanding mechanics only deepens as the brain continues to wire itself, which leads us to the final evolution in our source text.
Moving on to the 9-year-olds.
Yes, we move to the 9-year-old. Building on that introduction of history at age 6, by the time we hit age 9, the child's inquiry becomes deeply analytical.
It's almost detached in its curiosity.
It is. In the text, the 9-year-old's question evolves again. They ask, why are humans scared of darkness?
The lens zooms out even further.
And the linguistic evolution alone is fascinating. Like, they don't say the dark anymore as if it's a specific place like the kitchen or the bedroom. They use the word darkness.
They're grasping abstract concepts now.
Exactly. And they recognize fear as a universal trait. Why are humans scared? Not why am I scared?
Right, they're looking for a structural reality. They want to know the function behind the feeling.
And the parent's response levels up accordingly.
Yeah.
The text advises the parent to say, humans naturally feel more alert in darkness because we cannot see dangers as easily. Fear is the brain's way of trying to protect us.
The core strategy given to the parent there is to normalize fear biologically.
Normalize fear biologically. So what does this all mean? We've gone from immediate emotional comfort to an evolutionary history lesson, and now to a strict biological function.
It's a progression.
It reminds me of a biological seatbelt.
A seatbelt. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, think about it. You don't feel a seatbelt when you are just cruising along the highway in broad daylight. The drive is smooth, visibility is high, but the second you hit the brakes, the second visibility drops, and the environment becomes unpredictable. That seatbelt locks up tight.
And you feel the restriction.
It restricts you, which is incredibly uncomfortable, but it is doing it to save your life.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the strategy here is a profound cognitive reframe.
Yeah.
Look closely at the final phrase the parent uses. Fear is the brain's way of trying to protect us. It completely reframes fear from a negative, paralyzing emotion into an active, positive protection mechanism.
It flips the script from fear is bad to fear is highly functional.
Exactly. At age 3, fear was a panic to be soothed. At age 6, it was an echo of the past to be understood. But by age 9, fear is presented as an ally.
A feature, not a bug.
It's a feature, not a bug. The parent is essentially saying your brain is functioning perfectly. It realizes you cannot see your surroundings clearly, so it is deploying adrenaline to heighten your alertness and keep you safe.
And that is so empowering because it removes the adversarial relationship we usually have with our own anxiety.
We always fight it.
We usually do. We fight it. We want it to go away. We view a racing heart or sweaty palms as a sign that we are failing, or crumbling under pressure.
Right. We think something is wrong with us.
But this 9-year-old framework says, no, invite it in. Understand what it's trying to do for you. You can sit in the dark, feel your heart race a little, and instead of panicking, you can think, oh, that's just my brain deploying my internal security system. Good job, brain.
Good job, brain. Yes. It changes the relationship from combative to collaborative. The child learns to interpret their physiological signals not as a threat, but as a readiness protocol.
I think that is a massive challenge for all of us listening to this today. We can take this 9-year-old's lesson and apply it directly to our own modern anxieties.
Oh, absolutely.
Because think about it. What if your stress at work or that knot in your stomach when you are trying something new isn't a weakness?
What if it's not a sign that you are failing at being an adult?
Right. What if it is just your brain successfully doing its job? It is heightening your alertness because you can't clearly see the metaphorical dangers ahead.
It is your internal seatbelt locking up because you are entering uncharted territory.
It's a sign that your biological systems are working in peak condition. And looking back at the entirety of the text, that is the true genius of the evolution of darkness. It maps this incredible journey in just a handful of sentences.
Let's trace that progression one more time, because it highlights how precisely we must adjust our communication to match the listener's capacity.
Let's do it. So we started at age 3 with the immediate need for emotional validation. The fire alarm is ringing, the brain cannot distinguish between a shadow and a threat, and the only correct response is shutting off the siren by saying, that's okay, you are safe.
Taming the immediate physiological panic by anchoring them in the present.
Exactly. Then we move to age 6, where the brain demands logic, and we use historical science to reduce fear. We introduce the overzealous security guard to explain that fear is a shared human history, objectifying it so it loses its personal sting.
We remove the shame by providing a historical mechanism. We depersonalize the anxiety.
And finally, we arrived at age 9, where we biologically normalize fear as a positive, protective tool. The child grasps the abstract concept of darkness, and we reframe their fear as a highly functioning biological seatbelt that is actively working to keep them safe.
It really is a masterclass in shifting communication to meet the exact cognitive capacity of the audience, from toddler to preteen.
It really is.
And, it leaves me with a thought that I want to offer to you, the listener, as we wrap up this deep dive today.
What's that?
Well, we've spent all this time talking about childhood development and how humans are biologically hardwired to use fear as a protective tool when we cannot clearly see our literal physical surroundings, right?
The dark room, the shadowy hallway.
Exactly. But consider your life right now. How much of your adult anxiety, your daily stress, your hesitation to take a risk, how much of that is driven by the exact same biological mechanism but applied to the metaphorical dark?
Oh, wow. We are all still walking into unlit rooms, just differently shaped ones.
Yes. When you are facing an unknown future, a sudden career change, or a deeply uncertain personal situation, those are all moments where you simply cannot see dangers as easily. You are operating in the dark.
So your brain's response is going to be exactly the same as the 9-year-old staring into an unlit bedroom.
Exactly. Your alertness spikes. Your fear response activates, trying to protect you from what you cannot see. The biological seatbelt locks up.
We just need to learn how to read those physiological signals differently. We need to understand that the shadow isn't a flaw, it's a shield. The fear isn't the sickness, it's the immune response.
And if you can view your anxiety through that lens, it completely changes how you move through periods of uncertainty.
That is such a powerful way to look at it. Next time you feel that wave of anxiety about the unknown, take a page from the evolution of darkness. Don't fight it, validate it, understand the history of it, and recognize it as your own mind trying its hardest to protect you in the dark.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking those big questions, keep exploring the mechanics of your own mind, and remember to trust your protective instincts. We'll see you next time.